Maine Mendoza did something that reminded fans of AlDub. There are some moments in Philippine showbiz that may last only a few seconds, but somehow stay in the hearts of fans for years. For many AlDub supporters, the names Maine Mendoza and Alden Richards are connected to a special chapter that became much bigger than anyone expected. Their chemistry, humor, simple interactions, and the excitement surrounding them turned AlDub into one of the most unforgettable love teams in Philippine entertainment. And recently, Maine Mendoza did something that made fans remember those days all over again. It wasn't necessarily a huge announcement. It wasn't a dramatic reunion. But there was something about the moment, the way Maine carried herself, the expression on her face, and the familiar feeling surrounding it, that immediately brought back memories for fans who once followed every AlDub moment. Wait, is this giving AlDub vibes again? That was the feeling among some fans. For longtime supporters, AlDub was never simply about two celebrities appearing together. It was about the emotions attached to those moments. There was excitement, there was curiosity, there were inside jokes, memorable scenes, unexpected interactions, and countless conversations among fans. So when Maine did something that seemed to carry even a small resemblance to that era, fans naturally started connecting the dots. Of course, remembering AlDub doesn't automatically mean that a reunion is happening. But sometimes, fans don't need an official announcement to feel nostalgic. A simple gesture can bring back an entire era. Maine has grown, but fans still remember. Maine Mendoza has changed and grown tremendously over the years. She has explored different projects, taken on different roles, and built an identity beyond the love team image that first made her a household name. And that's part of what makes the nostalgia so interesting. Fans aren't necessarily asking Maine to go back to the past. Instead, many simply appreciate the memories. AlDub represented a particular moment in her career, a time when millions of people were watching, laughing, reacting, and sharing the same excitement. Seeing something that reminds fans of that period can therefore feel incredibly emotional. It's almost like opening an old photo album. You know the moment is gone, but the feeling comes rushing back. Why AlDub still means so much. The phenomenon surrounding AlDub was unusual because it created a massive emotional connection between the stars and their audience. Maine's character, Yaya Dub, became an instant sensation, while Alden's presence opposite her created a dynamic that fans couldn't get enough of. Their story unfolded through television, social media, memes, fan edits, and countless discussions. For many viewers, watching them wasn't simply about knowing what would happen next. It was about experiencing the moment together. That's why even years later, certain Maine Mendoza moments can immediately make people think of AlDub. The memories are deeply connected. Fans, notice the smallest details. One thing about dedicated fans is that they remember details. They remember the expressions. They remember the jokes. They remember the way certain moments felt. And when something familiar appears again, they notice. That's exactly why Maine's recent moment caught attention. For someone who isn't familiar with AlDub, it might seem like an ordinary interaction. But for someone who lived through the AlDub era, it can feel completely different. A tiny detail can become a reminder of an entire chapter. And that is the power of nostalgia. Does this mean an AlDub comeback? This is where fans need to separate hope from reality. A moment that reminds people of AlDub should not automatically be interpreted as confirmation of a comeback. Unless Maine Mendoza or Alden Richards themselves announce a new project together, fans shouldn't assume that one is happening. But there's nothing wrong with enjoying the nostalgia. In fact, that's probably what makes the moment so beautiful. It reminds everyone that even after people move forward in their careers and lives, certain memories never completely disappear. The AlDub story left a mark. Love teams come and go, shows end, projects change, celebrities grow. But some partnerships leave a permanent mark on popular culture. AlDub was one of those partnerships. Whether someone was a longtime supporter or simply watched the phenomenon from the outside, it was difficult to ignore the impact Maine and Alden had during that period. And perhaps that's why fans continue to react whenever something brings those memories back. They aren't necessarily asking for the past to return exactly as it was. They're simply remembering how special it felt. Maybe that's what Maine's moment really did. Perhaps the most interesting part isn't whether Maine intended to remind fans of AlDub. Maybe she didn't. Maybe it was simply a normal moment in her life. But sometimes, audiences attach their own memories to what they see. And for AlDub fans, Maine will always be connected to one of the most exciting chapters in Philippine entertainment. So when she does something that carries even the slightest familiar feeling, fans can't help but smile and remember. They remember the excitement. They remember the laughter. They remember the anticipation. They remember waiting for the next moment. And most importantly, they remember why AlDub became so special to them in the first place. Some stories never really feel finished. Perhaps that's the real reason fans continue talking about AlDub. It isn't necessarily because they expect everything to return exactly as it was. It's because some stories become part of people's memories. Maine Mendoza has her own journey now, and Alden Richards has his own journey too. But the chapter they shared created something that millions of fans will always remember. And maybe that's why one simple moment from Maine was enough to make people say, "This reminds me of AlDub." For longtime fans, those words carry a lot of emotion, because sometimes you don't need a reunion to feel nostalgic. Sometimes all it takes is one familiar moment to make you remember an unforgettable story.